Welcome, students, to ASM104, Bone, Stones, and Human Evolution. It's basically an introductory biological or physical anthropology class. I like to present this brief introduction so that students can get a grasp of kind of the history ideas about anthropology. Maybe you'll take this class and hear some of the aspects of anthropology and be interested in taking another anthropology course if you haven't already. But when we think about anthropology, and we do this together along with a short, brief quiz, and so this introduction, what follows is a short quiz, 3 questions, extra credit just to get you used to taking quizzes in Canvas if it's your first time. If you're a seasoned veteran, then it shouldn't be a problem. But now we're just getting back into the grind of the semester. So this course introduction will cover, what is anthropology, and then specifically what is biological or physical anthropology. Well, what is anthropology? Anthropos is a Greek word, anthropos, and it means human. And of course, ology is the study of. So anthropology basically and simply is the study of humankind. But you can think about the study of humankind entails lots of variables. And when it was starting to be formalized in academic programs in the United States, some of the oldest institutions that have been teaching anthropology in the United States are the University of Chicago, California, Berkeley, and Columbia in New York. It was Franz Boas at Columbia who then started thinking, the late 19th, early 20th century, that anthropology should be divided into 4 fields. And this is the 4-field approach that you see in U.S. anthropology, or the anthropological American school of thought. And what you notice is that, the study of humankind is quite a daunting task. That's a lot of information to kind of digest, and that's what we do as teachers and instructors. We have an end goal, what we want to know, and then we divide things into bits and bytes and small chunks, and we work on mastering those skills until we move on to another one. And so the 4-field approach generally has cultural anthropology, linguistics, archaeology, and biological or physical anthropology. You're taking a class in the last one, biological or physical anthropology. Cultural anthropology is kind of like a traditional form of anthropology where you go and live with people that are still practicing traditional life ways. Those that maybe are still hunter-gatherers or early agriculturalists, or those that still live in villages or village life that don't have gone through as much industrialization. However, we have plenty of anthropologists that study, modern cities like the city of Phoenix, how walkable it is, how much tree cover there is, things called food deserts where we don't have, grocery stores, large ones, Safeway, Albertsons, Bashas, that will move into a neighborhood because it's not economically viable, and it forces people in those neighborhoods to go to corner bodegas or Circle K's and gas stations that have to pay higher prices. Anthropologists study these in modern cities, these concepts. Linguistics is a study of language, its origins, and its usage. It can be a very broad field of study. There aren't that many linguistic anthropologists around that I know of anymore. Because we know, I guess because it's so wholly integrated into what we already do. Many modern anthropologists, you want to be an anthropologist, oftentimes you will need to learn several other languages, or at least have a conversational ability in those languages. If you're going to study abroad, then one of the best ways to have positive cultural contact, because that's what you're doing as an anthropologist, is to speak the native language. Archaeology is the study of past peoples through material culture. That is material that has survived the test of time. And those are cultural practices that form those materials, and They were passed down for generation, not just the materials, but even the knowledge to make them. We'll cover a bit of this near the end of the course when we have the first material culture ever discovered, which is stone tools. And we weren't the first species to make them either. You'll find that out. The last one, biological or physical anthropology. This is the course that you're taking, at least an introduction to. It includes, lectures, quizzes, exams, as well as it's a lab class. So we're going to go in greater depth in concepts. I'm not going to lie to you either. This class is a 4-credit class. It can be challenging because you will need to learn between 2,000 and 3,000 new terms. And hopefully by the end, it's not that you necessarily remember all the fossil names or the names of primates, that you remember, at least as a critical thinker, you're able to deduce 2 things: data and interpretation. They're not one and the same. And we'll get to more of that once we start talking about things like evolutionary theory and science. When you move into biological anthropology, then you also have a number of different subfields. And the course is designed in a way to play on the strengths of certain subfields or allied fields that need to be used in order for us to understand something or answer a question that we're interested as anthropologists and scientists. And so you'll notice that the first section covers lots of human biology or evolutionary biology. We're going to talk about things like cell division, cell replication, inheritance mechanism, DNA, and then we'll start talking about things like variation and end with things like human biology, things that, variables that humans that might be of greater interest to us. The second part of the course covers primatology, which is the study of primates. It can be primates that are living as well as extinct, because we use both of those records, but we'll focus mostly the second part of the course on the living primates, and then a little bit of the primate fossil record, and then into exclusively what's known as paleoanthropology, which is the study of human origins. And we have a number of different fossils that are intermediary between apes and us. Basically, what happened is the transition to walking on 2 legs or bipedalism in primates necessitated some type of transitional species to get to that point evolutionarily, because apes don't have a tail and neither do you. And every other creature on the earth that evolved walking on 2 limbs has a tail for balance as a cantilever. So how do you, as well as retain these very long arms? You can look at other creatures like a T-Rex, Tyrannosaurus Rex, chicken, kangaroo mouse, other marsupials that walk on 2 legs like a kangaroo. All of their arms are small. So how do you have this long-armed creature evolve walking on 2 limbs? And so it necessitated a number of different creatures before it got to us. And we'll investigate them quite thoroughly. There are other fields like understanding skeletal biology. That's something we're going to do. We're going to focus on at least having somewhat of an ancillary knowledge of human bones and teeth. Paleopathology is the study of ancient diseases. We may not really get to some of these topics unless a student has a question, but it actually is one of my expertises, studying, how these diseases actually evolved. Forensic anthropology is almost a whole nother field in and of itself. It actually offer ASM104 forensic anthropology at the college, at Phoenix College. I also teach that course, so I have expertise in that field as well. So you'll see that I'm breaking it down, pictographically, where, I told you basically the 3 sections of the course: evolutionary biology, living primates, and then, the argument for human evolution or paleoanthropology. Well, let's move into some of the portions of the course. The second part of the course focuses on living primates. And primates are amazing creatures. Of course, you are a primate, and all the other creatures that have specific features we're going to learn about are primates. That includes having generally a larger brain for their body size, grasping hands. We know some creatures like sea otters and raccoons, they can kind of stuff their food with their hands, as well as a few other creatures with exception. But none of them can really hold it in their hand like primates can, right? Because we have opposable thumbs, as well as other primates have opposable big toes. So they have grasping feet. So grasping extremities, generally greater emphasis on vision, and a larger brain makes you a primate. And why study them? Well, they're the most closely related living creatures to us on the planet. And if we learn more about them, then we can usually learn more about ourselves in things like behavior, in paleontology, and comparative anatomy is really important. But one of the sad and unfortunate aspects of studying primates and primates in general is that they are critically endangered. In our lifetimes, we may see several primate species go extinct in the wild. If you look at the great apes, goodness gracious, the great apes, some of the gorillas that Diane Fossey from Gorillas of the Mist, she helped. They're growing in greater numbers, but they're still in the thousands. And we're looking at tens of thousands of some of the great apes, like the orangutan might be actually the first to go, unfortunately. And so we try to conserve those areas where we know they have their natural habitats and zones. And then there are exceptions where they are rescued and we have captive care. But we also conduct research that is ethical to figure out, if primates or monkeys, for instance, or other apes, that they have certain behaviors or can be taught them or learned them. And this might mean that we inherited it from them and it didn't happen in another part or aspect of time evolutionarily. You'll have a better understanding of why we do this as we move along in the course. What we're going to do in the course is, after we've got an basic understanding of evolutionary biology, and then of primates, then we can use that information and apply it to the past with fossils. Understand that fossils, all of the organic material is pretty much gone and replaced by sediment, inorganic material. So it's really hard to know the age of a fossil because we can't date them or figure it out directly. We have to use things around it, like different types of soils, as well as, these are creatures we've never seen before or know of. And you have to use living organisms as a model to try and interpret them. Think of someone who is a paleontologist who studies dinosaurs. Dinosaurs, or most of them, are, with exceptions, bird-like lizards or lizard-like birds. We know that they provide the connection between modern birds and modern lizards. We don't know exactly how, but we know that to be true because dinosaur fossils like Archaeopteryx, very famous, bird-like lizard dinosaur thing, has a beak with teeth, which is a combination of modern lizards and modern birds, as well as a number of other features. And so if you wanted to study dinosaurs, you want to be a paleontologist to study dinosaurs, you generally have to know everything about just about every living creature on Earth in some ways that what is living now and maybe even was once living, to have a comparative data set. That's what we say when we use terms like the fossil record or the archaeological record. That's all the information that's ever been found. And yes, we have pretty good libraries of all the information that's ever been found. And in particular, you want to study dinosaurs, you need to know everything about modern birds and modern lizards, right? Because those are your comparative data sets. Fossils that are, intermediary between apes and us, or other primate fossils, we discover them. We can look at all the features of just the skeleton, and that's because that's all we have, skeletal anatomy. And then we try to make an inference based on what we know about living primates and other trends. And so after we learn about living primates, then we're going to apply that knowledge to the fossil record. And in anthropology in general, not just paleoanthropology, the study of human origins, field work is very important The only way you're going to get a fossil is conduct field work, which is a bit challenging for our class now because it's completely online. Is how do you get hands-on experience? Well, that's some of the labs. So in some of the labs, of course, you can do them all on your own, no problem. I will also have an open virtual lab that you'll be able to join or make an appointment where we can video conference. We can even share screens and we can walk through the lab together. I do also have a teaching assistant. Her name is Robin Cable. Her technical title is a student success specialist. She will also have time to work with students. She's taken the class before. And so when we look at paleoanthropology, we have to use the field work we do. We have to know about the shapes and anatomy of other organisms. We need to do excavations, that's archaeology. And then we have to figure out what they all mean. Once we get to the fossil record and have some of these, odd names for creatures that you're going to see, how do we make it all make sense? That's really the challenging part. That's what taxonomy and systematics, that's naming things and then putting them into categories, creating a system or some type of grid-like or ladder-like structure that we can look at evolutionary changes through time. Geology is an essential allied field in biological or physical anthropology. Not so much when we look at, living primates as well as even evolutionary biology, but once we get to the fossil record, as well as even principles of archaeology have to use geology. But we need to understand in general the structure, history, and composition of the Earth, without question. Some of the oldest fossils are algae that are, billions of years old. These are stromatolites. That's the picture on the right. Layers of algae, and modern places to find good stromatolites, something like the Great Barrier Reef. But understanding that the Earth basically, the continents shift, contract, and protract, go together, fall apart. We have, plate tectonics that have created huge ridges like the Atlantic Coastal Ridge for oceans, carved out of the Earth and its waters. There's a great place to find fossils, and look at the image on the bottom. Tethys, Tethys, Tethys. It was an ancient sea, and it looks like it's in modern day China. We find lots of well preserved fossils there because bodies of water usually tend to have very preserved fossils. You'll understand how that works, and so understanding about geology and past history of the Earth, as well as how sediments form and how they're successively put down on top of each other, will help you figure out how old some of the fossils you're finding in those layers are, and two, the best place to find fossils. Genetics is an ever improving field. Goodness gracious. We've only known about the genetic molecule structure for about 70 years or so. It wasn't discovered until I believe the late 50s, first published. And so that was the birth of molecular biology. And we're learning stuff about our genome and the genome of other creatures every day, not in hour by hour. We're making breakthroughs. And to understand things like evolution, other aspects of evolution like natural selection, you need to understand genetics. Matter of fact, it was Charles Darwin who was very weak on genetics. He knew that for his idea of, evolution via natural selection to work, that inheritance of those traits must occur. The problem for Darwin is he didn't know how it occurred. And it wasn't until Gregor Mendel, an Augustinian monk, who discovered at least one aspect or type of inheritance. Once we knew about inheritance, Darwin's ideas seemed pretty darn obvious. And so this is what's known as the modern synthesis, the coupling of Darwin's ideas and Mendel, and it's taught in every evolutionary biology course throughout the world. It's typically, for the most part, irrefutable. Now, there are aspects of it that we have been able to, and there's other ideas that are away from things like competition, but things like cooperation. Some of these ideas haven't been formalized or, really developed yet. And of course, we're working on them. But genetics and things like evolutionary biology is the first thing that we're going to have to work on in class. And so we'll move to a history of ideas and then other aspects of evolutionary biology at the molecular level, and then start talking about variation.